What's going on, y'all? Back for another video in the series. We're going to do the final touch-ups of our hero section here in this video. So off camera, I did do a couple of things that we talked about on the in the last video here. So let me get into Etch here. On the front end, I'm going to expand out my structure panel. So one thing we were looking at was our buttons not being quite the same height. I was able to adjust that a little bit. I made the icon a little bit smaller on those. So if I can find those here, I brought it down from 25 to 20. And then the other thing is I did align center, so it pulled my text down, because if I take this off, my text moved up a little bit, so didn't want that. We want it to be in line with everything right in the center. So that was one thing I did there. And then I played around with the colors. As I was saying, I was having issues in ACSS. In the previous version, I used to be able to click on each of these shades and then adjust them. But in the new system, we have granular shade adjustment here, so I can actually click in, arrow up or down on these to get them where I want. So I was able to figure that out. It just took me a couple of minutes after the video to get that set up. So I'll still have to go through and check all of my color contrast ratios to make sure everything meets the standards, but for the time being, I'm pretty happy with where everything is. Again, I'll come back and double check all of that a little bit later. So next big thing we're going to do in this video is work on our main hero background. So we have our linear gradient here. You can see we go from the dark to a little bit lighter back to dark. What I want to do is put in a background design in here. So one thing I need to do is make this position relative right away, and I'm going to go isolation, isolate, and what that does is reset my Z index on here to start over specifically for this section, so I can make sure I'm targeting everything properly as far as my Z index goes. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a before pseudo class. And as always, we need to put content in first, and that can be empty. Otherwise, it's not going to work. This is going to get set up as position absolute, which is why I needed to set up here to be position relative. And I'm going to do inset of 0. And what that does is it sets basically my content here to the left edge, the top edge, the right edge, and the bottom edge of the relative container. So that's going to be the shorthand of doing that, instead of doing like top 0, left 0, right 0, or inset, inline, start, and so on. So I only have to put one line in for that. Next, we're going to start building out our linear gradient. So I want to put in a background image, and I'm going to start off with a linear gradient. And again, as you saw up here, there's a handful of different things we can put in here, different colors, different angles and everything. This very first one I'm going to set up as without any angles, and I just want to set some lines. So one of the few things we can do with these is go like, we put in a color, and let's say we'll go black, and we want that to go from 0 to 2 pixels. And then I want transparent from 2 pixels to 4 pixels. And then back to black for 4 pixels to 2 pixels. So right now you can see everything is black in the background. It's because we also need to set our background size. And what our background size is going to have is basically a height and a width. So if we have a total of from 0 to 2, 2 to 4, and this actually should have been 6 here. 6 pixels and 6 pixels. You can see I start to get a black line going across here. And right now we're just doing the from left to right lines. You can see my Z index is a little bit messed up here. So on my inner, I'm going to come up here and put a Z index of 1 on here. And you can see now all of my text is back on top. Okay, so let's play around with this a little bit more. The next thing we could do is add in another linear gradient. And I'm going to take this and just copy and paste because I just want to show this example here. It's not copying for me. Let's try this again. Okay, and here we're going to go 90 degrees. And I lost my semicolon. All right, so now you can see we have up and down going here, and it looks like I just have these little dots everywhere. So playing around with these different positions on everything lets us determine where we want everything to be. So in my example, I'm actually going to want my background size to be 35 pixels on both of these. So now you can see it makes that square a little bit bigger. And another thing I could do is go to background, repeat, and go no repeat. And if you look up in the corner here, I just have one square showing, which is not what I actually want to do on this, but I just wanted to show you that that's how that could work if we want to set that in. If you leave this out, it's going to repeat by default. So let's go ahead and leave that as is and start building out the rest of this. So another way to do the same thing so that we're not just using hard values here is going to be actually using some calculations. So in my case, I want to make a plus symbol in here. So first what I want to do is if we take each of these boxes right now and we want them to be a total of, or we want that line to be right down the center of it, we need to have our first color actually be transparent. I don't know why my keyboard shortcuts are not working here. I'm going to hit save and refresh here and see if that fixes everything for us. I don't know that it will, but we can try. And it's not actually working for me there, so I'll just type these in. Take a little bit longer. We'll go back to black here and then transparent. So now you can see my line moved a little bit, and if I do the same thing here, I can do multi-cursor editing. On a Mac, it's Command click. On a PC, I'm not exactly sure what that would be. Control, I think, maybe. All right, so that changes a little bit where what is showing where right now. And again, we have our sizing not quite set up how we want it to. So really, if I wanted this in the middle, I'd be going from halfway of 35. If I did 14 pixels from 14 to 16 and 16 to 35. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll change it a little bit, get a little bit closer. Again, we'll come back and actually adjust this and set that up how we want it. And again, if I go background, repeat of no repeat, you can see my line is a little bit closer to the center on the very middle there. And actually, maybe what I'll do is I'm going to set these to white instead of black, just so we can see those a little bit easier. And again, if I set these to 14 to 16, and 16 to 35, you can see it starts to kind of force those lines towards the center of that square. Although it's not going to be perfect right now because I'm using a number that's not easily divisible by even numbers. So, and right now, basically what I'm setting is that my width here on the line is 2 pixels based on this right here, and the rest is just transparent. So that's the first part of how to get that set up. What I want to do now is actually start to build out the calculation so that I don't have to use these pieces here. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take this out here, and it's going to be, I'm going to have to determine what I want my actual width to be here on these. And this is where it starts to be helpful to put in actual variables. So I'm going to set some variables. I'm going to do my plus color, and right now we're just going to do white because that's what we're using. And then I want my plus width to be 2 pixels, and now for my calc is going to be my plus width, or my divided by 2, and what I need to do is 50% minus. I'll make this a little bit bigger so it shows up better. And I want this divided by 2, not 20. I'm just checking out my other screen here. Okay. Then I want to do the same thing on the bottom here. Again, I'm just double checking my notes on my other screen because this can get a little confusing here. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put this down here as well. And again, it's not copying for me, so to try that again. Some sort of browser issue going on. Not sure why that's happening here. All right. And then for my width here, I'm going to set this to my var plus width. And you can still see that nothing is happening here because we have to get some of this figured out here. The other thing I need to do is on this, I need to add in a second number. Because basically what this is saying is how far it wants this to travel. So we're putting in a number of that 2 pixels, and then I'm going a secondary number so it knows how far to actually go. All right, so we have transparent. We have our plus width. Which is our 50% minus the plus width divided by 2. Actually, I did this one backwards. It should be 0 to my plus width. Okay. I'm actually going to take out this other linear gradient here for a moment. And I want to take off my background repeat for now. Just going to comment that out. Okay, let's take a look at this and figure out what I'm missing here. So in my other example, I built out a few more variables here. So I'm going to go with my plus size, which is going to be my 35 pixels that I use down here. I'm just going to keep swapping these out. Copy and paste that a second time. Okay, so that sizing is still correct. And then I need my half plus width, which should be my calculation that I have right here. I'm gonna paste that in. And then we can actually just take that out there and here. Okay, so you see we got some weirdness going on here. I'm gonna go var half plus width. I should have, oh, I still have it down here, perfect. Okay. Give me 1 second here. And I see I have a typo. Okay, that helps a little bit, making sure we don't have typos. It's always a little bit tricky talking and typing and thinking at the same time as you make these videos, so just bear with me on this. It looks like I actually need to do one more calculation here. And I'm going to call this my plus width calc. And it's going to be similar to our other one, except we're going to go 50% and plus our var of plus width. And then we're going to divide that by 2. Close that here. I'll pull this up for you guys, so come on. Got something going on here that doesn't just want to work. Maybe I need to replace my mouse or something. All right, so okay, so that's what I needed to do, is I actually needed to put in a calc on my middle portion. So now we're getting our line going straight across, and if I uncomment this out, we can see that it will be roughly about half of that distance on the top and bottom. And now, if I take this full linear gradient, copy it, put a comma in, paste it, and I set this to 90 degrees. We should get our plus. So now, the problem though, is it's just a grid right now, which is not exactly what we want, but it is at least in the center of our box when we look at our background repeat. So the next part is, how do we make this not go the full height and width of the background size that we have here? So in order to do that, I found the easiest way is to use a mask. So similarly to the background image, we can do the same thing and have it cut out a specific piece of it. So in order to do that, I'm going to go mask image. And for this one, I'm going to use a radial gradient. And it's going to be set up very similar to how we did the linear gradient. So it's going to be a circle. I'm going to use my black color, and it's going to be, I'm just going to use a random size here, 7 pixels, and then we're going to go transparent. And I need to put in a number there. And now we, just like we did with the background size, we need to do the same thing on our mask. So I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste that, and I just need to change this to mask. And now you can see I start to get this plus here. And if I want to set my positioning to make sure that it's center and center, I can do that on both of these. I'm going to do background, and I'm going to go to position, and I'm going to use a position of 0 and 0. I'm going to copy that, do the same thing down here. and paste. And this one I just need to change to mask again. Okay. So we got that set up. And if I take off my no repeat, you can see I start to get my pluses going now. So it's not perfect as we look here, but what I want to do is actually change my coloring for my white here. So right now, if I find anywhere I have my white, which is going to be these two places, my plus color, you can see that comes back. And what I actually want to do here is going to be a transparent color. So primary, actually I'm going to go secondary, ultra light, trans 10. All right, so you can start to see that kind of just fades into the back a little bit. One thing I want to do is go just a little bit thicker on my plus here, just like this. And I could probably even come down a little bit on here. I just want it to be very subtle in the background, but you can see that we now have all of those pluses in there. So basically what is happening is our circle from our mask is cutting out part of that plus, or part of that grid that is in each of those boxes of 35 pixels by 35 pixels. Now, because this is just all decorative, I'm not going to go to rem for all of these things. I'm just going to leave them as pixels. But the nice thing is you just saw by using locally scoped variables here is once I change my sizing here, everything adapts and I don't have to re-go in and put everything in. As you saw, it takes a little bit of time to get all of the items put into place. But if I explain what my calculation does here is we have our half plus width, which is we take our 50% of that 35 pixels positioning that we have. We're going to subtract out our plus width, which is 3 pixels, sorry. And then we divide that by 2 because we're going to need a left and a right, or a top and a bottom. And then on this one, we're doing just the opposite. We're adding in that plus width so that it sets our actual width of right here. So by putting all that together is it actually calculates the direct center for me, and I don't have to hard code actual pixels for all of them, because then you would have to change what you're using and use a lot more variables probably in order to do that. So I think this is the better option to do that. So that finishes out that. I'm going to hit save. Let's jump to our front end, hit refresh, and you can see that is going the full width of our background. I don't have any left or right scroll just because it's taking up as much of the position as we're letting it based on that inset of 0. But it's just super subtle, gives a little bit more design. And one thing I could probably do is take all this code and put it into our surface and overlays. I can make custom ones in here and set that up if I want to. I think at this point I'm just going to leave it as is because I don't know if I'm going to end up using it in another part of the website yet, but once I cross that bridge is when I can come back and copy that over. But at least I know I have it here. if I need to, so it's already established. So that's going to conclude this video. We finalized the hero, put that all together, and I'm pretty happy with it. I don't think there's anything else that I missed on that because it is responsive. As we go down here, everything seems to work. Again, really the only final thing we'll do at the end of the build probably is going to be come back and look at our colors to make sure everything it has enough contrast ratio between the background color and the text color to make sure that it meets the minimums. All right, so I'm happy with that. So I'll see you guys in the next episode.